South Point is also proud to provide a variety of relaxing amenities for the guests who want to be pampered. Soak up the sun and let your stress melt away in our lagoon-style paradise swimming pool. A relaxing getaway where you can bask in the desert sun and enjoy seasonal food and bar service poolside. And if you really want to escape, come to Spa Costa del Sur. From couple suites to a co-ed wet area, our spa caters to business and leisure travelers who want to unwind and elevate their senses. A visit to one of our spa's steam, sauna, or whirlpool treatment rooms will leave any guest feeling like they can take on the world. Our gaming amenities include over 60 table games and over 2,600 of the most popular slot and video poker machines. We have penny slots, including the popular Buffalo games, and real machines like Wheel of Fortune, Triple Sevens, and Megabucks. If you prefer video poker, try Deuces Wild, Double Double Bonus, or a variety of multi-denomination games. Or try your hand at one of the most popular casino table games in the world, Blackjack. Don't let the game intimidate you. Blackjack, also known as 21, is both easy and fun. And our dealers are always happy to assist. And the best part? Blackjack always pays 3 to 2. Next, check out the roulette tables. Roulette is one of the easiest casino games to learn, and so much fun to play. It's a favorite of both beginners and seasoned players. In addition to blackjack and roulette, our casino pit features over 60 popular table games like Baccarat, Pai Gow Poker, 3-Card Poker, Ultimate Texas Hold'em, and Mississippi Stud. So get out of your room and come join in the fun.
Good morning, welcome in. It is Sports by the Book, the week before. It's 1 week from Thanksgiving. Normally it'd be Thanksgiving this week, but the calendar a little bit different this year. I'm Jeff Parles. We're thrilled to be with you as always. As we are ready to go with week 12 of the National Football League. You just snap your fingers and season's almost done. Crazy in its own right at this point, but there you go. We'll get some college hoops. We got some NBA, some NHL, college football, a new bracket revealed 2 days ago in the college football playoff. I'll give you my thoughts I'll save those for a little bit. There is one college football game today. It's not terrible, not bad, down in Atlanta. But all eyes are on Cleveland, Ohio tonight between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. 8-2 versus 2-8. You got the inverse in here tonight. First place in the AFC North for the Steelers after last week, where we didn't expect the classic Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, but guess what? We got a classic slobber knocker when it was all said and done. Pittsburgh, for the second time this year, wins without a field goal. 3 times that's happened in the NFL. Pittsburgh has 66% of those this year. They beat Baltimore 18-16. Pittsburgh's defense, again, Jackson just doesn't play well against them. This is kind of weird because Baltimore ended up with 6 yards per play and Pittsburgh only had 4.1. You can argue the Steelers were a little bit fortunate. I thought they were, but you know what? When you're a well-coached team and you have another team's number, sometimes luck always finds you in those matchups. And now on a short week, they go to Cleveland, the Steelers do. The Browns are 2-8. The only 2 wins for Cleveland this year came against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who currently hold the worst record in the National Football League. And they have a win over the Baltimore Ravens, which was, of course, the first game without Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston came in. That was the only, high-end game that Winston has played, because Winston played well on Sunday against New Orleans, but ended up being a 3-touchdown loss. Cleveland won that game 29-24. Browns at 2-8 now, heading for the top of the draft at this point. Just heading for the top of it. Not going to be much of a shock when they end up there when it's all said and done. The Steelers, I don't think anyone thought they were going to be a realistic contender. They were the long shot here at the division in the AFC North, leading it now through 10 games with a 1.5 game lead on Baltimore with the head-to-head win. So a little difficult for Baltimore to make that up. So tonight, Pittsburgh's a 3.5-point favorite. The move on that has been slight. Moved up to 4, now toggled back to 3.5. Right now in the market, there's no 4s. It's all 3.5. I think there's one 3.5 juice to the favorite, but slight juice right now on this game. It is an interesting handicap here tonight because Mike Tomlin has had his problems on the road on Thursday night. And the Steelers organization, remember, they haven't been playing Thursday night games for very long, a little bit over 20 years now, just about 20 years for non-Thanksgiving games. The Steelers, all-time, are 0-7 in the division on Thursday Night Football on the road. 0-7. Overall, when you add it in, they're actually 2-1 out of the division, and one loss was that ridiculous game to Minnesota a few years ago. But they're 2-8 overall under Tomlin on Thursday Night Football on the road. Cleveland, of course, last year won their lone Thursday night game. They beat up on the Jets on a Thursday night, but that was also Joe Flacco, and that was also a team that was a playoff caliber team. Now, historically speaking, we know that there's some sluggishness after playing Baltimore for Pittsburgh and vice versa for Baltimore playing the Steelers the week after that. Again, those two teams beat the heck out of each other for 60 full minutes. And now Pittsburgh has to go on a short week here. And actually, the schedule makers did no favors for Pittsburgh with the week after Baltimore this year. Both Baltimore games for Pittsburgh are followed by short weeks because, of course, we have the Christmas craziness where we have Wednesday afternoon football with the Steelers and the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Texans on Christmas Day. But here you go for tonight for Pittsburgh. If this gets back to 4, this will absolutely be a take of the points for me with Cleveland. Now, this is the Steelers are more than capable of blowing Cleveland out here. Jameis Winston could throw multiple picks, could lead to multiple scores for Pittsburgh. Plenty of scenarios like that are in play here for this game. But this is, again, to Cleveland's credit, they have gotten up for the divisional games this year. Now, the Cincinnati game is a little bit of a weird one because that was the game where Watson ruptured his Achilles. They were in a big hole when Watson got hurt. They were down 21-6. They ended up losing by a touchdown. Of course, they won that Raven game at home. This is the final home divisional game for Cleveland. This feels like this is going to be a tight game. Now, I'm not saying Cleveland's going to win the game outright and pull what would be a second nice-sized upset within the division for them this year. But if we get back to 4, this will be an auto take on the Browns. And I would still lean to Cleveland plus 3.5 here tonight on this game. Now, prop-wise, and our guy Sean actually made a good point before the show, so bravo to Sean. On this, our resident Steeler fan. But I'm curious to see, since all the Cleveland wide receivers are basically the same, who does Joey Porter Jr. line up against for the majority of the game? Or is this just, hey, Joey's going to lock down one side of the field and go from there? Now, last week for Cleveland, if you're just going weirdo stats, and we'll have a further breakdown in the afternoon, Ryan McCormick and I on Football Frenzy, you're looking at last week, it was a huge Jerry Jeudy game, a huge Elijah Moore game as well. Both guys, again, Jeudy at 142 yards receiving and a score with 6 catches, all those season highs except for the touchdowns. Moore had 6 for 66 in the score. Cedric Tillman, who's the guy who's really gotten the bump since Deshaun Watson got hurt and Jameis Winston took over, had his worst game with Jameis at quarterback. Before, it's pretty crazy seeing the line here for Tillman. Tillman, in the games before Deshaun Watson got hurt, so that doesn't include the game Watson got hurt, Cincinnati. Cedric Tillman had 3 catches for 9 yards in the first 6 games for Cleveland this year. After that, 8 for 81. 7 for 99 and 2 touchdowns, 6 for 75 in a score. Last week was his weakest game with Winston at 3 for 47. I would anticipate that Jerry Jeudy's the guy who gets the majority of the Joey Porter Jr. coverage, which would then lead me to Tillman. We're looking at Cedric Tillman props here tonight more than anything. 50 yards plus at plus money at DK. I think that's pretty good if you want to take a shot on that. Tillman over 3.5 receptions. His receiving yards at 43. You could do the whole sort of thing with Tillman. That would be the one guy we're going to look to attack here tonight on the Cleveland side. I'm still trying to figure it out on the Pittsburgh end. And we'll have that later in the day on Football Frenzy. That comes at 3 o'clock. Ryan McCormick and myself. I know Ryan, do we have the suit today or no? We do have the suit today. All right, I have a real shirt in the car, so we'll be in good shape on that at 3 o'clock. With Ryan and I getting you ready. And also our friend Dwayne Colucci will join us at 3:40 this afternoon. So be on the lookout on this channel here today. All right. College football today. Interesting game. Georgia Tech welcomes NC State. The Yellow Jackets, of course, the last time we saw them, pulled a big upset. They beat Miami. Sent the Canes to their first loss of the year. 28-23, and quite frankly, Georgia Tech was in command the whole way. It was an impressive showing by the Jackets, who used multiple quarterbacks in that game, both Haynes King and Aaron Philo. They both played reasonably well. Both played reasonably well in that game. And look, credit to them, and they pulled the upset, and that was a great bet all the way around, and Georgia Tech ends up winning that game. NC State, of course, has dealt with, again, a significant injury to Grayson McCall, who ended up having to retire from college football altogether because of it. And since then, it's been a mixed bag. They, of course, had to win at Cal, where they came from way back. They destroyed Stanford in the last timeout in a game where I thought the wrong team was favored. Duke won outright in Raleigh and really shut down NC State and C.J. Bailey. It was 16 of 39 for 184 and an interception and 1 touchdown. We can start doing the bowl hunting here for these college teams. Georgia Tech's good. They're already at 6. They're already bowl eligible. NC State gets North Carolina next week in that big rivalry game. North Carolina's already reached 6. Also, poor Ryan McCormick's going to have to deal with more Mac Brown apparently after this year now. I don't know why Mac Brown's sticking around, but whatever. But NC State is going to be an underdog in both of these remaining 2 games, including tonight. Now, we have the scenario here where if a team needs to win a game, especially to get bowl eligible, it means they're pretty mediocre to begin with. And this has been a pretty mediocre team all year long, regardless of who's been a quarterback for NC State. So for me, this is a total layoff unless one of 2 things happen in the market here. Unless if we get to 10, which based off of other market moves, including one reputable offshore to just actually move to 8, so we might have a shot on the other end. If it moves to 10, it would be a take of NC State. Now, I don't think I'd go north of 7 on Georgia Tech, but if you got a flat 8, I think I'd consider it. Now, not much of a difference between 8 and 9. We get it, but again, it's a scenario for me where I think I don't think we're getting all the way down to 7. Don't think we'll get that by the time this game kicks. But 8, I think, is solid if you want to lay it with Georgia Tech. Not 9. There's some 8.5s here in town. Our friends over at the Westgate Superbook have 8.5. But it'll be interesting to see if we get an 8 across the board in this game. Again, for NC State, they need one of these last 2. If not, no bowl game for Dave Doran and company here in 2024. It was pretty disappointing for an NC State team that actually started the year in the rankings by the AP poll. And quite frankly, if you're paying attention all year, you saw the cracks right away in week 1 against Western Carolina, where they needed a big fourth quarter in order to not get upset by an FCS team. All right, let's look at these college football rankings. I know that Alex and Kenny did this earlier in the week. Let's go with the top 25 first, and then we'll extrapolate it out to the bracket here. So there's your top 25. Ryan, was this you that put this together? Good job. Very nice bracket here, or graphic on this one, and the bracket graphics fun too. So the 12, I should say, that are in the bracket do not include the 11th overall team, because that's how it's going to work here in 2024. Of course, the top 5 conference champions. By the way, the one scenario that the door is somewhat open for, but I think would be shocking if it happened, would be if the American Athletic Champion hopped the Big 12 champion and the Big 12 got left out altogether. That scenario actually is in play, but I would be floored if that happened. I would probably take Army upsetting Notre Dame this week, and then I would have to imagine that Notre Dame would fall, and then there'd be a lot of dominoes that would fall to likely actually get more conference champions in than even expected in that scenario. But why even bother with that? Army's going to probably get destroyed by Notre Dame this week. I think the Irish run them out of Yankee Stadium. So Oregon still at 1, Ohio State. It's pretty funny, basically, looking at what the committee has done, that Oregon, Ohio State are pretty much Teflon at this point if they win out the regular season. And the winner of that game in Indianapolis, if assuming Oregon's already there, if Ohio State beats Indiana this weekend, is almost a 2-touchdown favorite at home, and then beats Michigan in the big game, and then whoever wins that conference title game, they're in as the 1 seed. I think that's pretty much set up by what the committee has done. The only thing that I don't really like, and Ryan, you can go over to the bracket part of this now. So Penn State is number 4 overall, which I think is ridiculous for what it's worth, but that's a different argument for a different time. The bracket does no favors to any of these Big Ten teams that are highly rated because of the way that the format has to be. The top 4 conference champions, regardless of seeding, are getting buys here. So it doesn't matter that Ohio State's ranked number 2. They're the 5 seed if they don't win the Big Ten title. If they win the Big Ten title, they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. This would go for Oregon as well if Oregon ends up losing the Big Ten title game to Ohio State or Indiana or whoever it may be. Penn State's number 4, but they're the 6th seed because of that. Indiana's number 5, they're the 7th seed. And I could tell you right now, if these are the matchups, I'm 100% betting Ole Miss at Indiana if we get that matchup, and Ole Miss will likely be a road favorite in that game as well. And then Georgia, Penn State, I guess Georgia would probably be the smallest of favorites in that game, even at Happy Valley. Like maybe 1.5, 2. And I'd still lay it with Georgia. Now, you're asking the one fun thing with the committee, and Chris Andrews has made this point also, where you have all these Southern teams going north in this bracket right now. Alabama goes to South Bend. Georgia goes to State College. Ole Miss goes to Bloomington. God, what a ridiculous sentence that is. But hey, credit on Indiana for being good. The way this bracket sets up right now would be, I think it would be a very bad bracket for people that don't like the SEC right now. Now, if you take it for futures markets, then I still think Ole Miss is the best bet out there, period. I think in this bracket, they would get to the semifinal. Would actually be Georgia, Ole Miss, 10 versus 11 in the semifinal in that scenario, which would set up some fun as well. For the almost famous group, I actually agree with the committee moving Tennessee out. I moved them out of my top 10 last week. I know they have to win over Alabama, but you just can see that they're not on the level of even though they beat Bama. Bama's better than them now. Ole Miss is better than them. Georgia's better than them. And they proved that on the field last week. No problem with Tennessee being 11 and because of that left out of the bracket. Boise State ahead of BYU. I have no issue with that. But I will tell you, if BYU ends up winning the Big 12 at 12-1, that will flip. I don't think there's much debate on that. The interesting one will be if Colorado or Arizona State or Iowa State, one of those teams, wins the Big 12, how high do they go? I think Colorado's the only one that could realistically hop Boise for that 4 seed. But look, right now, futures-wise, Ole Miss is the one, even though you missed the best of it at this point. By the way, the SEC, as we've talked about, is a mess right now. Ryan, you have those standings handy in the SEC? Yeah. All right, go for it real quick. So Texas, of course, got the auto bid as the SEC champion as the number 2 seed. Texas and Texas A&M are the only 2 teams with one conference loss right now. Now, that cannot end the season like that because Texas and Texas A&M play each other the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Which, by the way, it's interesting on this. What do you think Texas A&M is worth a little bit of bite of the apple at 18-1 to win the conference at this point? I know they're a small favorite, and these numbers are from Westgate, right? Or DraftKings? Thank you, DraftKings. Texas A&M is 18-1 at DK right now to win the SEC. I know they're a small favorite against Auburn to be a dog against Texas and likely whoever they play in the SEC title game, but it seems like a pretty reasonable number at 18-1. Right now, even though they're sitting in the 5 slot, Alabama actually has the easiest path to the SEC title game. Just because the way the tiebreakers work out and the logical results that will end up possibly happening. If Missouri beats Mississippi State this week, Alabama then is totally in the driver's seat if they beat Oklahoma and then win the Iron Bowl to get that second bid in to the SEC title game in Atlanta. Texas A&M, no, I think is solid at 18-1 to win the conference if you want to take that at DK. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we get back, plenty of college hoops today, plenty of hockey, NBA as well, but got to shout out the chat, as always. Not Sean's in there, Ryan's in there, Jerry, Vince, JR from the ballpark. I always love hearing from JR. JM's there, and Roger Long's in there as well. We thank you, as always, for watching and commenting along with us every single show here on Sports by the Book. All right, we'll talk to you in a few minutes because we'll take a quick break, and we got some college hoops on what is the beginning of Feast Week in college hoops here on Sports by the Book.
South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in. It's Sports by the Book here on a Thursday morning. I'm Jeff Parles. Happy to be with you as always. All right, let's get to some college hoops. Feast week. A lot of games going on right now over the next few days, and all these games starting early. There was one that started super early here today with James Madison and the Illinois-Chicago Flames right now, and that one's right on the number. Look at that. That's pretty good there. All right, let's start with Youngstown State and Monmouth. Yes, I know, what a matchup. This game is a neutral site game in Texas later today, so I really like this at 5. So this touch 4 here at the South Point now back up the ladder to 4.5. That is the predominant number in the market right now. I still think Monmouth is good. If you want this now, you look at the early season KenPom numbers. And look, it's a little bit hard to figure out, all right, what is real, what is not. From Monmouth's perspective, they're 0-5. They're bad. They're all signs of a bad basketball team. They're in the 300s on defense. Their offense is average. They've played a pretty tough schedule, though. Michigan State, legitimate top 25 team. Rutgers, even without Ace Bailey, still reasonable. They played Wichita State. Tough last time out. So they're improving as this year has gone along. Youngstown State, who is about 100 slots ahead of Monmouth and KenPom. They got destroyed by Ohio State. They took Syracuse at the Dome to overtime earlier in the week. Chicago State's their only win. I thought this number should have been 3. Personally, I don't know how good Youngstown State really is, and I don't think Monmouth is as bad as the numbers tell you they are. So this is still a play at 4.5, even though it's not the best of it, on Monmouth here in this one, this neutral site game in Texas here today. All right, Washington State and Eastern Washington real quick. This is no longer a play for me, but I want to just say that the market is betting this correctly. Where this opened 11.5, now it's 13 on Wazoo. I thought that 11.5 was great and jumped on it last night. Now at 13, yeah, it's probably no good. If it get this, and a lot of these numbers will climb early in the morning, early in the season in college hoops. If this thing climbs to 15, it would be a take the other way on Eastern Washington. But at 11.5, 12 even, I thought was good on Wazoo. Civil War in basketball. It's so weird to see this game the week before Thanksgiving, but that's what we get now with realignment. Beavers and Ducks. Now, Oregon has played 2 really high-end games. One game where they almost lost to Portland, and they should have, quite frankly, but survived in overtime because the game got there. Because of that, by the way, they fell 14 spots in KenPom after that game. But they really bounced back and played well against Troy. But for Oregon State, who the Beavers have played 4 nobodies, they're 4-0 so far. This is the biggest game on your schedule this year, other than when Gonzaga comes calling on January 16th, where they go to Corvallis. But this is, to me, a bet on Oregon State and plus 6.5. Even though this is one of those, the numbers don't really back it up. The numbers say that this number at 6.5 is right. But this is the Oregon State Super Bowl this year, getting the shot at the Ducks on their home court. They beat them last year as well at home. I take the 6.5 with the Beavs at home in this one. All right, moving down the board. East Carolina takes on Jacksonville State in Daytona. This was 3 last night. Now it's 4. Tread carefully. If it goes back to 3.5, I still think it's okay. 4 were on the outer ranges here on East Carolina against Jacksonville State. That game's at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. It would only be the look to the Pirates in that one. All right, to Charleston next. All these neutral sites games that I'm listing right now. Seton Hall, who's off to a dreadful start, takes on VCU. Now, there were concerns about the Pirates going into the year because the NIL, of course, remember Seton Hall won the NIT last year. The NIL at Seton Hall has not been at the level that they were hoping. So this roster is lacking offensive talent. This is the biggest difference in the country right now, offense-defense. Now, again, it's early on KenPom, but we can at least glean this. Shaheen Holloway's squad is 11th in defense, so elite defensively. They're 262nd in offense. So they've been brutal on the offensive end. They already have 2 losses to teams they have no business losing to. They lost on a buzzer beater at home against Fordham and then against Hofstra in a game that only featured 58 possessions. They had a lead late and lost 49-48. And now they take on a VCU team who early in the year now, again, not great opponents for the Rams, but they did hammer Boston College on a neutral already. Not a total pushover of the Eagles this year. They beat up on a good Merrimack team for those mid-majors. Merrimack still now in the Metro, in the MAC with 2 A's in the move up from the NEC. But I think this number is too high. Seton Hall's defense should be able to keep them in this game. Now, the big problem for Seton Hall is VCU so far this year has been a top 10 defense. The total is super, super low. If it was 131, we'd be going under 126.5. It's just so low. It's just hard to go under it, even though it probably is still an under game. And we'll take it 7 with Seton Hall in that one. We can skip the next one on the list, Ryan, because that number's gotten away. I liked Portland last night getting 9 against South Florida. The market has loved Portland. Look at that. 6. Now we're almost at the point where you want to go the other direction on this game, actually. I thought the proper number on this game was 7, personally. So no bet at 6, but it is interesting to see how the Pilots have just gotten hammered in the market in this game. That game's at Coastal Carolina, so Myrtle Beach for that one. All right, now we go to the Bahamas. Boy, there are 2 really good games here. Wow. St. John's and Baylor's awesome. What a great game that is in the Bahamas. Not even Atlantis, it's just a different Bahamas small MTE. So it's 153 on the total. There's a lot of 152.5 in the market still. I like this game over. Now, St. John's plays at a super quick pace. That's the big reason for it. And St. John's right now, 71 possessions a game and a top 20 offense and a top 20 defense in Ken Palm, but they play fast. Baylor is super efficient on offense. And the last 2 games, Baylor's been willing to run. Now, granted, the opponents in those last 2 games have been Sam Houston State, who's actually a pretty reasonable team, approaching the top 100 in Ken Palm, and Tarleton State, who's terrible this year. But I think this is going to be played more at St. John's' pace. I think this is going to be a 72, 73 possession game. If that's the case, 153, 152.5 is good to the over in this one. All right, the other game in the Bahamas, Virginia, coming off a nice win in Baltimore against Villanova last week, now takes on the Vols. 12 in this game. I would take the dog. It's a lot of points to be leaving on the board in a game that's totaled 125.5. Now, Virginia so far this year, 3-0. Talent is lacking. Defense has not been quite as good as you would have expected. Now, of course, Tony Bennett retired 2 weeks before the season, so it's not the same. Offense is still mediocre at best. But this would only be a take of the points with Virginia at 12. Wouldn't go much lower than that. Starting to see some 11.5s pop in the market, but I would take 12 with Virginia. I just hope they have enough offense to stay in this game and play this game within that number. And then the last one that I like tonight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, technically a neutral, but let's be real with ourselves. We know it's not. Syracuse will have a home court in some fashion here against Texas tonight. 10.5. There's some 11 in the market as well. Now, Syracuse, this is not a particularly good basketball team. They're sub 100 in Ken Palm. Their wins this year have been totally unimpressive. They beat Lemoyne by 4. They beat Colgate, who, again, will inevitably probably be in the NCAA tournament out of the Patriot again. They beat them by 2. And then they needed overtime to beat Youngstown State for their biggest win of the year is 9. Now, Texas is ranked in the top 25 by Ken Palm, but I don't have them as a top 25 team. The only non-total pushover they played is Ohio State. Here in Vegas, Ohio State beat them pretty handily. Their other 3 wins are against the superpowers. You ready for this, Ryan? The superpowers of Houston Christian, ranked 357 in Ken Palm. Chicago State, 353. And Mississippi Valley State, the worst-ranked team in the country, at 364. Texas played no one. They played no one. Other than Ohio State, and Ohio State beat them. Not saying Syracuse is good enough to win this game outright, but plus 10.5, plus 11 is a lot of points to be leaving on the board. I would take it with the Orange in a game where they will have 85% of the crowd. The other matchup there is Texas Tech and St. Joe's. Yeah, this will be mostly Orange for the crowd in that one. All right, quickly, in the NBA. Few games here tonight. As I've told Ryan McCormick, if I make a pre-flop NBA bet to smack me in the head before I make it, the only angle that makes any sense to me tonight is the Lakers at 4.5 against the Magic. Check the injury report. Check the injury report on who's actually going to be in this game. These are non-NBA Cup games that are going on right now. Make sure that everyone is there for LA, or at least most of the team is there for LA before making a bet. But it would only be a lay of 4.5 with the Lakers in this one against the Orlando Magic. The other games, Detroit's a small favorite on the road at Charlotte, 1.5, nothing there. The Timberwolves are up to 8 now in that game. That was 6.5 last night, so the market has bet the T-Wolves in Toronto, not much of a shock. And then the Spurs are 2.5 at home against Utah. Nothing in anything for me on any of those games. All right, before we go, NHL. Colorado goes to D.C. Boy, it's a shame Alexander Ovechkin got hurt because what a run he had been on. Looked like his old self again through the first month plus of the season. So this has been all Colorado in the market in this one, which is not much of a shock. I thought minus 130 last night was a great price on the Avs. Now it's up to $1.40. Still okay. You're getting to the outer ranges of it being okay on the Avs on the road. I know Colorado hasn't been the same team that they've been in the past, but boy, Washington without Ovi, I just don't think they have. We'll see. Could be one of the fallen stars theory where they first game out, team plays inspired and wins, and the Caps are off to a great start. But I do like Colorado in this one. All right, the other two games, Islanders and Detroit and the Red Wings. Totals will go here. It's 6. Wouldn't go further than minus 120 on the juice, but that's where it is everywhere. So under 6 would be the play in Detroit and the Islanders. And then the last one, we go north to the border, Calgary, hosting the New York Rangers. It's plus 140 behind us. You can find plus 145 over at our friends at the Superbook. Find the best number you can on Calgary. That would be the only play in this game. Rangers in the middle of their huge West Coast swing right now. Got a nice win against Vancouver after winning in Seattle to begin it off. But again, pretty brutal 4-game stretch through these Western Canadian cities and Seattle. I do like Calgary for a potential flat spot here for the Rangers. So we'll take the Flames plus price. So a favorite, a dog, and a total. Got all 3 on the NHL here today. All right. That's what I got for you here this morning. Fun day coming up. Of course, you already saw Race Day Las Vegas this morning with Ralph Sirocco coming up at noon. I have a triple header here today because I'll be with Frank Nicotero on Punchlines FN right here on YouTube at noon. No loaded shows coming up. Joe D'Amico and his great picks coming up as well with Frank on that show at noon. And then Ryan McCormick and I are back right here on this channel at 3 o'clock, Football Frenzy, to get you ready for the Steelers and the Browns and the week ahead in the NFL and college football. Jerry, Sean, Ryan McCormick himself, and your dog, wherever they may be. Thank you as always. I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again at 3 o'clock right here on this channel for Sports by the Book, Football Frenzy.